Welcome, SEC fans, to another week of Best of the West. I'm your host, Kevin Bohannon, and as always, my co-host, Jake Thomas from Tide Talk. Jake, how we doing, bud?
Doing good, guys. Kevin doing good. And let me just say one thing. When I say Alabama's going to win by 30, they're going to win by 30. Just take me up on that.
Take it to the bank, and I think, Jake proved to be a prophet this week. We're going to go look at next week. We're going to review the SEC Players of the Week announced by the conference today. I had a little problem with that, and we'll discuss that here in just a second. But we want to let you know that, as always, this episode of Best of the West is brought to you by betonline.ag. College football is in full swing right now. They got some really good specials and deals over there. If you want to put some money on a game or two, go on over to betonline.ag and place your bets. Hey, we're finally in the swing of things, and week 2 is upon us. Short week. Had Labor Day yesterday. Hope everybody had a good long weekend. It was a good long weekend to get to enjoy football for about 6 straight days, starting last Wednesday evening, and then, of course, ending with Ole Miss and Louisville, which really wasn't surprising. Ole Miss came out without Lane Kiffin and looked really good. So, Jake, we'll start with what were some of your takeaways from this weekend that you were expecting, and then some that kind of surprised you?
Well, I'll start with my surprises. And I was on record last week saying that I did not feel like that UCLA had a chance. And I'm still not really sold on that team yet. But for LSU's sake, man, you guys have got to find a run game and ASAP. I mean, you only average like 75, I think, total yards between 3 running backs. I mean, you got to find something. Now, you have a quarterback. Max Johnson stepped in and he proved himself. He's the only reason why you guys are in the game.
Yeah.
So that, I really thought that this LSU team would be different this year, but I mean, it remains to be seen. If they can't find a running game, they're in trouble because you can't be one dimensional in the SEC.
No. Mississippi State proved that last year.
Yeah.
Almost proved it again this year. We didn't think Mississippi State would cover the big number that was put out there, but they were down by 3 touchdowns, and for them to have to come back at home, I think it's a lot of the same old stuff with Mike Leach, and that team is not going to be any better. Of course, we picked them to finish in the cellar this year, and I think that's where they're at right now. Of course, they gave up turnovers, long touchdown runs, passes. Of course, they're going to throw the ball because that's what they do, but I thought they would play a little bit better, though. That honestly, and of course LSU giving up as many yards as they did. UCLA might be the real deal with 20 starters and Chip Kelly really fighting for his job now. So that still remains to be seen. And of course they dropped like a rock. And if you look at the AP poll that came out today, it's no surprise. Alabama 1 and Georgia 2. How about Georgia, man? Of course, it was a bloody knockdown, drag-out fight, as you would expect. But talk about Georgia and Clemson a little bit.
I watched pretty much the entirety of that game after the Bama game, and I'm still not quite sure if it was 2 great defenses or 2 horrible offenses. I mean, everybody talked about JT Daniels, and I was really high on him because it seemed like last year when he finally got the nod at starter, they kind of went on a roll and was putting up points and it all just clicked.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was kind of a weird game for me. I mean, only it was a 1 defensive touchdown, the rest was the field goals, and it was so I guess, a lot of people, it's now, I just looked at betonline.ag at the spread or at the betting line for this week, and it's 25.5 right now between Georgia and UAB. But if Georgia gets their offense rolling, they could get that easily. But I'm not going to sleep on UAB because Bill Clark's a great coach.
And, he is a great coach, but they did lose to an FCS school this past week.
I know. But you had Georgia coming up. You probably more worried about that than
How about the little stepbrothers, the FCS schools? They had 6 upsets over the week. Washington upset by Montana. I think Montana improves to 3-17 against the Huskies. You had Holy Cross upsetting UConn.
That's not an upset.
Yeah,
It would be an upset if UConn would have won.
Right. Yeah, that made the way for Randy Edsel, who's going to retire at the end of the year, to go ahead and make exit stage left pronto. So, let's take a look really quick at the players of the week in the SEC. Offensively, not a surprise, Bryce Young. Everything we've expected, he lived up to every expectations. 344 yards, 4 touchdowns. He set Alabama records for yards and touchdowns by a quarterback in their first career start, passing previously Jalen Hurts, who had 287 in 2016, and then Mac Jones had 3 touchdowns in 2019, and so did Joe Namath in 1962. 71% of his passes, 94-yard touchdown pass, which tied for the second longest in Alabama history. And the biggest thing this week is outstanding on third down. 8 of 10 passes for 157 yards, 7 first downs, and 2 touchdowns. What a week by Bryce Young. Did you expect they would be this good, Jake?
Honestly, like I mentioned last week, and I mentioned on our show, I thought that it would be kind of neck and neck for the first couple of series, kind of a filling out series.
Yeah.
And I put right before the game started on Twitter Saturday that I felt like, the first quarter being like 7-7, and then Alabama would get on a roll. But I mean, that first drive, Bryce Young led right down the field, and I was like, oh my gosh. And the thing about it is, and I hate it. I hate it for you guys. It's that's got to play Alabama this year, but Alabama doesn't rebuild; they reload.
Yeah,
and that was proven this past weekend.
Yeah. Defensive player of the week. And this is the one I have an issue with. Christopher Smith from Georgia. He was the safety that had the 74-yard touchdown run. That was the only touchdown of the game in Georgia's 10-3 win over Clemson. I know it was the biggest game in the SEC and nationally this week, but he had 1 pick and 3 tackles. Jalen Catalon had 11 stops, 8 solo, 2 interceptions that racked up 78 yards in return yards. Okay. And then I would have put somebody on Georgia's defensive line before Smith just because they had 8 or 9 sacks against Clemson. It was ridiculous. I just think the politics of it, and not just because I'm an Arkansas guy, it was, okay, this guy had 2 picks. This guy had 1 pick. I know it's a bigger game. Rice is not Clemson. We get that. But it's just the way I see it. Thoughts?
I mean, you're absolutely correct. I mean, how do you put a guy that had, 1 touch, receiving touchdown or interception touchdown and 1 tackle in a defensive player when you had a handful of other guys who had sacks? You had your guy who had 2 interceptions. I just don't understand who's making these picks.
Yeah,
I mean the Bryce Young one is spot on. The defensive one is very questionable.
Yeah, special teams. Will Rockard had a perfect night. He had 3 field goals from 38, 51, and 40, accounted for 11 points, 7 times, 7 touchbacks. That's worthy of the honors. They did give defensive line to the nose guard from Georgia, Jordan Davis. Co-defensive line of the week. Zachary Carter from Florida had 4 tackles, 3 solo, 3 tackles for loss, forced fumble, and a career high 3 sacks. That's huge. That's a game right there. You have 3 sacks, forced fumble. I mean,
that's your defensive player.
Yeah, come on. Offensive lineman Kenyon Green from Texas A&M and Luke Fortner from Kentucky. Kentucky looked pretty good this week. 564 yards of total offense. Quarterback was slinging it all over the park. Freshman Debo Williams, linebacker from South Carolina, they rolled over Eastern Illinois 46-0. He shared Freshman of the Week honors with Caden Costa, the place kicker from Ole Miss. He had 3 field goals, including 47-yarder in helping Ole Miss drill Louisville. So yeah, let's roll through the games real quick from last week. Tennessee took care of business at Bowling Green. No surprise there. We talked about Kentucky. Arkansas started out slow, and you sent me a message, and I loved it. Tell your boys to get their act together. They needed to. Started out slow, but Kyle Sutherland and I talked about it, and we were really conservative in our picks this week. Kyle picked 28-20. I didn't think we would cover, and we wouldn't have, except right there at the end. Catalan got his second pick of the game, and then we punched a late touchdown in. We 31 unanswered points. The running game was good. The passing game wasn't. We had drops, overthrows. It looked like typical first-year quarterback under center jitters, and that's just the way it was. Our special teams have got to get their act together. Gave up a punt block once again. That cannot happen. The good thing is we do have a field goal kicker, Cam Little. Looks like he's going to be pretty good, and we kicked the ball in the end zone. But our punt team is still atrocious. We did have one inside the 5-yard line that helped us late in the game, seal the deal. But I think they're going to use Jefferson's legs more this week, and we'll talk about that in our next segment. But, yeah, Arkansas rolls over Rice 38-17. Like we said, scored 31 straight in the second half, unanswered, to win over the Owls. And then Alabama started out hot, stayed up the whole game. They took the mighty U down 44-13. Bryce Young, of course, 344 yards. Brian Robinson, 60 yards on the ground. And then Williams led them in receiving at 126 yards. Tell us about the Alabama game, Jake.
What I was really happy to see was that Trey Sanders touchdown. I mean, this kid has dealt with one injury that ended his season. Then he had a bad car wreck last year, or that ended his season. So, he finally healthy. And if he's healthy, you have him to go along with Brian Robinson, Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, which we did see a little bit of him, but he fumbled it early in the game, and Saban kind of yanked his chain and pulled him off. And then you still got Kamar Wheaton, who we didn't see yet. So, I mean, that running back room is loaded. Defensively, we lost Christopher Allen probably for the season, but
it's a tough loss.
It is. But we have pretty much a 5-star jump right back in his place in Drew Sanders. But losing him, I was worried about Teoto as well, but it looks like he just has an elbow sprain, so he should be back. And honestly, we'll talk about it in week 2, but coming up. But I want to see like maybe 2 series out of our starters and then pull them. We can't afford any more injuries, especially on defense.
Yeah, that's going to be big, especially going down the stretch right here when you get. Somebody like Ole Miss, somebody said today that the score was going to be 70-60 in the third quarter. Well, it might be. You never know. So we'll see. Mississippi State had to come back, the largest comeback in Mississippi State football history, from 21 down to beat the mighty Louisiana Tech Bulldogs.
Hail State.
Wow. Yeah, I'm still scratching my head on this one. Will Rogers, 370 yards. Okay, yeah. I just don't get it, man. They're either going to figure it out or they're not. And Mike Leach may be around for year 3. He may not. So, what are your thoughts, Jake?
Yeah. I mean, where Rogers could be that quarterback, but it still remains to be seen. I mean, you had to come down big against La Tech to beat them. I mean, that's not a good look. Yeah, it is kind of a history-making moment for them because that's the biggest, comeback that they've had. But still, against La Tech, that's not really impressive. You should never been in that position.
Yeah,
but, so maybe they'll get together because I don't want Mississippi State to succeed in beating up the SEC East, but I want them to at least win enough that Leach stays around because that dude has an imagination for sure.
Oh yeah, he's definitely, and he got the nickname the Pirate for the reason. So
right.
I'll be interested to see them rolling forward. Missouri, a little bit closer game than what people thought. Connor Bazelak had a little over 250 yards. They had over 200 yards on the ground rushing. Auburn, we had a question last week. We didn't know if Akron was that bad or Auburn was going to be a little bit better. Turns out that Akron is really, really bad.
Yes.
Auburn jumped out on them 37-0, wound up winning 60-10. Bo Nix, 20 of 22, 275 yards. Tank Bigsby, the bowling ball back, 119 yards on the ground. I think this was kind of expected. They took care of business in what they did in Brian Harson's debut. It looked like they were playing 7-on-7 on air back there sometimes.
I know, and I had to calm an Auburn fan down on Twitter because he's already saying they're going to win like 10 games. I'm like, pump the brakes. You played Akron. Week 3 when you play Penn State at Penn State in a whiteout, and Penn State's defense looked really good this past
Had a big
weekend.
win, over Wisconsin.
Yeah,
That shocked me.
Yeah, so I mean, if you go up to Penn State and beat them, I know it's a Big Ten team, but if you go up there and beat Penn State, then I might start getting a little bit of credit. But until then, it remains to be seen what this team's going to do.
Yeah. South Carolina rolled over Eastern Illinois 46-0. Florida, the Emory Jones era started out kind of slow.
Mm-hmm.
14-0.5. He was replaced in the second half by Richardson, who went off for 160 yards on the ground. That dude can roll.
Yeah.
Do we have a quarterback controversy in Florida?
I think so, because I don't think Emory Jones is the answer. And if there's any Florida fans listening to us and watching, let us know, who do you want as your quarterback? Because I don't think Emory Jones is it.
Yeah, he just looked – it's just decision making. They said, he's going to have some, freshman mistakes and everything, but he just didn't look like it. I mean, he's an athlete. I get it, but you just can't be an athlete and succeed at a high level playing quarterback in the SEC. The Richardson kid, he looks like a tailback out there. Really reminds me of Jalen Hurts kind of. I mean, just how he runs hard. It's going to be interesting down the stretch if Mullen goes to a two quarterback system. So keep an eye on that, Gator fans. Georgia and Clemson we talked about. Texas A&M started out slow against Kent State, only up 10-0 at the half. Scored 31 in the second half, like Arkansas did. Haynes King, 292 yards. They had another 124 from Shane on the ground. Looks like just another balanced attack leading the Aggies. They just took care of business. Slow start, but they ended up with a rout.
Yeah, I kind of expected it would actually wouldn't be that close at halftime, but it was. But they got their act together in the second half, and they look like they're going to be a real deal this year. So I'm interested to see, how it plays out for them.
Yeah. Vanderbilt did not represent. They got beat by East Tennessee State. Somebody emailed me and said, or texted me and said, Vandy got beat by Etsy. And I was like, I knew what it was, Eastern Tennessee. But you might as well call it Etsy. That's terrible. On SEC, the recap show at night, their scoreboard show, they said when your first 15 seconds of highlights is just a field goal, you know it was a bad night. So, it was definitely a bad night.
Awful.
LSU we talked about. They got to figure it out on defense. They are now 5-6 since they won the national title. 5-6. They won't put up for this down there in Baton Rouge. Eddie O may be on the hot seat before we know it. We've seen this in the SEC West before, Jake. Our boy from Auburn before Malzahn, Gene Chizik.
Yes.
Wins the national title, goes 8-5 or so the next year, then 4-8, and he's gone.
Right.
So it's not, it's more what have you done for me lately, not, do you have a ring? So Ole Miss, they looked really good. Matt Corral, 381 yards passing. He's got a ton of options out there. Snoop Connor had 60 yards on the ground. Man, Ole Miss they looked as exciting of a team as I thought they would this week.
Yeah, I watched most of that game last night. The first drive was like a well-oiled machine. I was kind of concerned with Kiffin not being there, how they was going going to play early on, but they come
Yeah.
out, had a great drive, start up the game. They scored. Then they stopped Louisville, and then I think the second or third series they threw 3 straight passes, and it went nowhere. I mean, I don't think they got maybe 2 yards. I was like, man, I just didn't get the play calling it that early, but they got it together and they rolled like I thought they would.
Yeah, so that recaps week one. The league went 12-2 overall. Nobody played any conference games this week, of course. With LSU and Vandy sitting at 0-1. Everybody else is 1-0.
That's terrible.
I know. You just gotta shake your head. It doesn't surprise me though. I mean, not much does surprise me anymore. So looking at week two, we have a lot of games that are going to be blowouts this week. Alabama welcomes Alabama State. That'll be Auburn has Alabama State. That'll be a name your score game.
Yeah.
South Carolina and East Carolina. That'll be an interesting game. Carolina's favored by 2 right now. I say South Carolina wins just because of Shane Beamer and the fact that he focuses on special teams. And right now, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and like I was mentioned before, I'm kind of high on South Carolina, so we'll see. I was kind of worried about the graduate assistant stepping in at quarterback, but he showed out. Of course,
he did fine.
Who it was, Eastern Carolina, whoever it was, or whoever they played this past week. But we'll see what he's made of this week.
Yeah. Pitt in the Johnny Majors Bowl, Johnny Majors Classic. Pitt's a 1.5 favorite at Tennessee. I didn't see enough from Tennessee this past week to say I don't think they can do it, but Josh Heupel, they're going to score some points. I think Tennessee can beat Pitt.
Yeah, and it's going to be at Neyland, and that place is going to be loud. And I don't know if you want to really call it an upset. I don't know how good Pitt's been the last couple of years. I know maybe 4 or 5 years ago they was in the ACC championship game, but
when they had Connor,
I don't think they're as good now. But if I'm picking Tennessee because this is their season right here. If they win this game, then they can win 6 games and get bowl eligible. So they have to win this game this week, and I think they can do it.
Florida is a 29-point favorite at South Florida. South Florida, if you remember back in 06, 07, had some magic where they started out 8-0. I think it was about the same time Rutgers was doing their thing over there. So it's not the same South Florida team. The Bulls are way down. Yeah. Florida does travel down there to Tampa. So it just depends. If Florida rolls, both quarterbacks out there, they should be able to keep South Florida at bay to score at least 35, 42 points to cover that. Georgia and UAB, Georgia's a 29-point favorite. I think they'll get back on track. A little interesting game this week. Texas A&M goes out to Boulder, Colorado. A&M's a 17-point favorite. What's your thoughts, Jake?
I think they're going to come away with a win. I looked today. Colorado struggled. I think they only put up like 35 against like a nobody.
Yeah.
So they, I think A&M may struggle early like they did this past week, but that team's too talented to lose to Colorado. But I mean, it is football. Anything can happen.
They may be a team that is slow starting with the new quarterback. They find their rhythm and then they go. We'll see. But like you said, they definitely have the talent. They definitely have the studs. Sometimes it's not about the X's and O's. It's about the Jimmies and the Joes. Right. And they definitely have them over there at College Station. Mercer at Alabama. That's a name your score game. The one that's probably one of the most competitive this week. Texas is a 6-point favorite at Arkansas. It just depends on how we play, and I know a lot of people say that, and that's kind of a Captain Obvious statement. But if we come out and play like we did in the second half, I think we can win. Steve Sarkisian is 5-0 against Arkansas as a coach, whether he was at SC, Alabama as an analyst, or Alabama as an OC. So he knows how to game plan. It's going to be rocking. It's the first sellout since 2017. Right now, I would say Texas wins, but we'll have to see. I'm really hoping that we come out and play really well, cut down on the mistakes. We got to cut down on the penalties. We had 13 penalties against Rice. We are going to miss Bumper Pool for the first half. He was ejected for targeting, which is another thing that we can talk about some other time. They need to change that rule. I don't think if it's malicious, you shouldn't be ejected. It should be like a technical foul rule. If you get 2 targeting penalties, then you should be ejected. That's just a problem I have. What are your thoughts? I know you're really big on Arkansas. What are your thoughts on this game?
I have 4 little pick'em leagues I'm in. I did 3 of mine today, and all 3 of them I picked Arkansas.
Yeah.
And on the 4th one, the one that I'm actually going after money on, I may actually pick Texas just to save face. But KJ Jefferson is a stud. I mean, he can get it done with his arm and he can get done with his legs.
Yeah.
So that's a different type of, something you got to game plan for.
Yeah.
So if he gets pressured, he can run out of the pocket and get 4, 5, 6 yards.
Yeah, we're gonna have to throw the ball to beat them. We're gonna have to get Jefferson outside the pocket. I think he's better at throwing on the run. Traylon Burks will be a week more in shape. He hadn't practiced in 2 weeks leading up to this game. Had been in a boot most of it. So I don't think we'll have that issue. We had way too many drops, but I like the chances if we come out, jump on them early. NC State makes the trek down to Starkville. This is a pick'em game. NC State, Mississippi State. Since it's at Starkville, I would give Mississippi State the advantage. I think NC State's a little bit better team right now, but I think at Starkville, I think Mississippi State hangs on.
I don't know much about either. About NC State. I do have a friend who's a big NC State fan, and so I just don't know if they get down 3 scores against NC State. Mississippi State ain't got a chance.
Yeah.
So they've either got to keep it close. Or they got to be ahead at halftime, because if they're losing at halftime, I don't think they can come back.
Yeah. Austin Peay is at Ole Miss. That's a name your score game, and then McNeese, FCS school, LSU gets back on track this weekend. There's no line on those games. Those games do not have lines until the day of the game, and I think there's 5 or 6 of them this week. Vandy is at Colorado State. Colorado State looking to bring another SEC team out west and beat them like they did Arkansas a few years ago. That was a lot of fun. And then probably the first SEC matchup of the year, Missouri at Kentucky. Right now, Kentucky's a 3.5-point favorite. I think the Wildcats hang on and pull it out against Missouri.
This right here will determine the second place, winner in the East.
You think?
Yeah, I am not sold on Florida whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, you still have Todd Grantham as your defense coordinator. You're awful. So
I love it.
So I mean, but yeah, I've said this year that Kentucky will finish second in the East, and I'm more about. I think that's going to happen now because of Will Levis. He can throw the ball, and that's something that Kentucky hadn't done in ages. It seems like.
Yeah,
they may have somebody that can throw.
They used to throw it all over the park.
Yeah. When they had like Andre Woodson and guys like that, the last couple of years they've been running like a wildcat.
Yeah,
it's weird. So now they've got
comment in our chat. Is Will Lewis or Will Levis Kenny Trill? Kenny Trill Hill. For those of you that do not remember Kenny Trill Hill, came out first SEC game, threw for like 380 and 4 touchdowns.
Yep.
And was never heard from again. Ended up at TCU, where we played. Arkansas went down there when we had Austin Allen at quarterback, beat them in overtime, and then they returned the next year and beat us at Fayetteville, of course. But who knows? I think he's better than Kenny Hill, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
I was going to ask you, how do you think about old Cody Orgeron playing against his dad?
What position does he play?
He's a quarterback.
Is he a quarterback?
Okay. At New State.
Yeah, that's always fun. I got to coach against my dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, his last year as a coach before he retired, I was the offensive coordinator. And our high schools were only about 7 miles apart. So I got to coach against him. And it was really weird really funny because I was, offensive coordinator. He knows my tendencies. He knows what, I would do in certain situations. But I pulled a few wrinkles out that night, and we got the best of them. But
Ooh,
yeah,
beat the old man.
Yeah, LSU is going to take care of business. It's going to be ugly. I just get ready for it.
Yeah,
get ready for it. So I know somebody asked earlier, is Arkansas going to go 2-0 against the SWC, the old Southwest Conference?
Mm-hmm.
Got a chance. Got a chance. I know we probably won't go 3-0 this year. So this game is bigger for Arkansas because this is going to determine if we get to a bowl game, I think. If we don't, we got to win 3 conference games. I think we have a chance based on what we saw this weekend to get there. It's just a matter of if we do it. But this gives us a little bit more wiggle room and gives us a shot to get even a better bowl if we're able to win, because the next 2, I think we got Georgia Southern and University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. We should take care of business in both those games. But it would be nice to go 4-0 in non-conference play for the first time in I don't know how long.
Who's the 2 or their opponent you play out of the East this year?
We have at Georgia.
Ooh, never mind. That's a loss.
Yeah. And Missouri.
I think legitimately you could beat Mississippi State. If you play mistake free, and that's always hard in the SEC.
Yeah.
Against Auburn, you can beat them, and you can beat Missouri. So there's 3 wins right there in the conference potentially.
Yeah.
And LSU, that is correct.
Yeah, the only problem is we have to go to LSU, but we do get Mississippi State, Auburn at home, and we get Missouri at home. So we do have to go to Alabama and Georgia. That's always awesome. Seems like every year that just happened. It was so great last year that when they were like, all right, we're going to play SEC only schedules. And I was like, when they announced it, I said, I guarantee you we get Florida and Georgia from the East.
Oh,
sure enough.
Y'all got the short end of the stick on that.
Both of them. Yeah,
it's awful.
Hey, it happens. But yeah, hope everybody had a great week 1. Was able to get out there and tailgate, use some tailgating tips that we had for you last week. Get your questions into us. Jake, let them know where they can find you on social media.
I'm on Twitter at Jake Thomas TTS.
Jake Thomas TTS. Okay, and it's the Tog Talk podcast. When do y'all drop your episodes every week?
Usually the Wednesday or Thursday. More than likely this week is probably going to be Thursday night or Friday morning. My co-host, Stacy, he is out with COVID, so I may be solo either tomorrow night or Thursday night. We still hadn't decided when I would be solo yet, so we'll see how that goes.
We'll definitely keep him in our prayers, as I know firsthand that could be rough. So you can find me on Twitter at Coach Cabo_HTP. And I am a co-host of the Hog Talk podcast. We're back to 2 episodes a week starting this week. Had our first one yesterday that recap week 1, and then we'll have our Texas preview coming out on Friday. So make sure you catch us and catch Jake's podcast on all your favorite platforms. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a comment. Make sure you let us know if there's some content you want us to talk about. We're here for you. And make sure, and I want to give a shout out real quick to our man, Stephen Willis at Willis Digital Media. He's helping us out every week. And for all of our SEC fans, for Jake Thomas, I'm Kevin Bohannon. See you next time.